over the town. Being entrusted with the role of best man on this special day is a great privilege. And I would say a great pleasure, but quite frankly, this part of the job would be described as agonising and terrifying. But thanks for the job anyway, Steve.
Anytime.
Some of you will have witnessed the speech that Steve gave when performing best man duties for me a few years ago. And I think it was truly an emotional experience for everyone involved. Admittedly, the emotions consisted mostly of pain and outrage and the fear of what he was going to say next. And the hat that you wore and the sunglasses were a highly relevant and lovely addition. So today, it's not just about wishing you well on the beautiful journey of love and marriage.
Are you going to wear a hat?
Maybe in a minute. Where was I? Throw me!
Sorry.
That's alright. No, I really have lost myself.
Journey of love and marriage.
Journey of love and marriage that Steve and Alison are about to take today. It's also about vengeance. Okay? On which note? Okay?
Well, all the time, John.
I do, yeah. Unfortunately, Steve wasn't always the forward-focused driving, accounts crunching, pants ironing, model citizen that he is today. In his murky opacity, he blessed me with a rich and varied catalogue of misdemeanour and shame, which I intend to use against him. It is a gift, let us use it against him. Sorry, I'm slightly drunk. Thanks. Steve and I met at the age of 11 when he tried to sell me heroin in the school. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, it's not quite true. It's actually crack cocaine. A friendship soon evolved, based largely on a mutual love of the Pet Shop Boys. And much of our school day rebellion seemed to involve the misuse of chips, which we would go into town and play football with in crowded shopping areas. And Steve would like to post chips into the houses surrounding the school, which sounds a bit sort of disrespectful. Post them through the letterboxes. I think it was a sort of misguided harvest festival effort. I think that's okay. But my defining memory of Steve's school days was his legendary disregard for turning up to certain lessons. The rest of us would file into religious studies on a Wednesday morning, and we'd be met with a familiar question from Mr. Faulkner: "Where's Steve?" Looking out through the window and across the sports fields, we could all see where Steve was. He was enjoying a one-man picnic at 9 o'clock on his own in the sports fields. And my favourite part of this was the teacher's complete lack of surprise or concern about this. Such was the extent of Steve's maverick tendencies. In our later school years, recreation time with Steve and the lads began to revolve a bit more around drinking. Good times. Do you remember those days, Steve, when we used to drink too much?
No, I don't remember them.
Me neither.
No. Is that your own urine?
Yes. If you like to all open Exhibit A, which I think my glamorous assistant has all posted on your tables, you'll see a little example of some of those early drinking days and some of the results of it. Now, there weren't many photos of these days because none of us were particularly able to use a camera because we were drunk most of the time. There we are. Steve with long hair, Steve collapsing on the floor. No. I do recall some less than epic nights in with Steve, when we drank a single can of Heineken and we'd sort of collapsed on the floor in a pathetic scene of teenage angst. But later, Steve rapidly ripened into a supreme party monkey. And although the details of that period are quite hazy, I do remember some quite mangled parties of Steve's, courtesy of a very understanding mother. So thanks, Tina. And some highly You should join in. Had some highly irresponsible fireworks parties where Steve would sort of fuse together several fireworks in kind of amalgamated death firework, perilous clusters of massive explosives. And the rotary washing line, I seem to remember, became a spinning launching point for lots of dangerous and quite powerful rockets. But somehow, Steve survived into adulthood, and of course, he soon found himself involved with a string of ladies, pretty ladies, or honeys. And I think it would be quite nice and not at all inappropriate if we could all have a look at some of those former conquests now. So if you open Exhibit A, no, Exhibit B, we've done that one. Exhibit B, you can all have a look. As you can see, none of Steve's ex-girlfriends was particularly attractive. Except maybe the one on the bottom left, who was a bit of a hottie. But that was only because Steve overclocked her so many times. We never thought Steve would actually find himself a soulmate that didn't run on electricity. Alison, of course, being powered by a small solar panel on the back of her neck. When Steve and Ali met, it wouldn't be quite right to say that it was love at first sight. I can't remember Steve's exact initial reaction to Alison, but it's probably something like, "Oh, she's alright." Alison, typically of ladies, was a bit harder to impress. You think that Steve's John Leslie-esque good looks and his sharp, early 20th century clothes sense would have been enough to win her over, but apparently not. Instead, there followed a sustained campaign of seduction, during which time Steve honed his dancing talents and plied Alison with an ever more elaborate cocktail-making skill. And his efforts paid off, and in October 2003, according to Crystal, who records all things, they got it on. You can see some samples of those early romance days if you open Exhibit C. I think my best man contract requires me to offer some wise words of advice to my newly wedded friends. So, to Steve. To Steve. Actually, no, to Ali. To Ali, I would say men don't always express their emotions verbally in the way that men do, which is a nice way of saying that women talk a lot, perhaps too much. So you need to read the subtle signs, but don't worry, because to this end I have produced for you a guide to Steve's inner emotions. And we can all have a look at this now if you open Exhibit C. C. In that case I don't have enough exhibits. No, it's D. See, that's a guide to all four of Steve's emotions. Now you'll be able to look at him and just understand his innermost thoughts, of which there are four. To Steve, I would say, approach your marriage as you'd approach a computer game. Be determined, be prepared to make sacrifices, and in a head-to-head conflict, always reach for the best weapons first. Okay? Apart from that, I've got no advice because women are complete mystery and can't be understood. So instead, here's a spare key to my shed in case you need to be alone. Quite relieved that I didn't confuse that with the rings during the ceremony. To finish, can I just say how proud I am to share in Stephen Allison's special day. I'm so pleased that you found happiness together. You're both wonderful people and great friends, and I wish you a life full of fun and happiness together. To Steve and Alison.